So I'd like to say a little bit about my preparation for the Seven Ironmans and a little bit more about the Seven Ironmans in general, but also the emotional and physical challenges that I had along the way. So it took me probably about 18 months duration to plan, 15 months of that training solidly up until the 17th of July this year, which is when I actually undertook the 7 Ironmans. So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, the Ironman is the single hardest single day event, endurance event in the world. Generally has about a dropout rate of 20% for every single race that is undertaken. It's a 2.4 mile swim, normally in open water or the ocean, a 112 mile bike, and a full distance 26.2 mile marathon, back to back with no breaks, transitioning between each one normally in under 10 minutes. And I undertook 7 of those in 7 consecutive days. So that worked out at somewhere around 16 miles of swimming, over 700 miles of cycling, and over something like 150, 160 miles of running across the 7 days. One of the biggest challenges really was to learn from scratch how to train for that, because it's not something that many people have done. It's not something that there's a book written on how to do it. So that was a really big challenge for me. So a lot of trepidation and fear going into it, each step along the way, trying to almost invent the right way forward. So I had to lend from lots of already established principles across other disciplines. So looking at ultra endurance swimming, ultra endurance cycling, and ultra endurance running, and found out very, very quickly that it was impossible to train the load that was required of any one of those single disciplines. So I had to very quickly find confidence in the fact that you couldn't train that amount of hours, possibly 16 to 18 hours a week, if you wanted to be a top single day iron distance athlete. And it's near and impossible to train more than that for 7 days. But I had to ensure that I was fit for each day, and that I didn't deplete and fatigue and break down each day, and that my recovery rate was very, very high. So the principles of key nutrition, training to recover, so finding training adaptation that will allow you to recover very, very quickly. So sometimes the training adaptation is to look at gaining speed, strength and endurance, which is something I looked at very early on and built up a really strong base of fitness in swim, bike and run. And then really had to switch over to just absolutely training my body to recover as quickly as it could, to be able to handle lots of natural anti-inflammatory, so supplements and nutrition that would keep my body from swelling, which creates fatigue, which slows you down, which stops you eventually. So that was the key for me. Psychologically, that was really, really tough, because I knew that I was inventing it, and that everybody I was going to were giving me their best guess. That the advice, whether it be a book or online or some specialists, it was their best guess. And what most of us came to the conclusion was that less is more, that overtraining would be seriously detrimental. To undertrain, I was more likely to be able to compete and complete this if I was slightly undertrained. If I was overtrained, chances are that my body would break down even quicker. So there was that knife edge stuff. When you build up a profile like this, and there is a charity that you're backing and trying to raise money, there are people you're trying to inspire, there are limits you're trying to hit, and you put out a public persona, there's a lot of pressure on you, psychological pressure, and it's something in my life I've been able to handle quite a lot of. A very, very busy person, lots of split spinning sort of thing. So that didn't really get to me. But the magnitude of what I'd set out to do and what I claimed that I felt I was capable of doing, that weighed heavy on me. But it motivated me big style. Hardly ever missed training. I would get on that bike and sit on it in the dark for 3 hours at lipid pace, trying to teach my body to consume fat more efficiently as a fuel source. So the pressure for me was a good one. And most people can testify to that balance of being pushed over the edge or not enough and then just not caring. And that didn't happen to me up until literally the last month, where I almost felt like I peaked too early. With about a month to go, I felt I was ready, and I had to work harder in training because I wanted to back off. I felt almost like I'd gone too long, or maybe I'd started too long. So there was a lot of this knife edge stuff as I went along. Am I training correct? Am I eating correct? A lot of it was experimental. There were times when my confidence was really high, and I knew I was going really well, maintaining weight and seeing power and speed increase, and feeling my recovery rate. So I mapped a lot of my recovery rate over being able to sustain certain intensities over less and less recovery. And then also looking at how quickly my heart rate would drop from session to session or through my sort of cool downs, and I could see how quickly I would recover, and that gave me a lot of confidence. So I did ride high on the confidence throughout the duration of the sort of 15 months. I didn't really have a dip in that. There were little goals along the way that I set myself. For example, with about 6 months to go, I did 3 back-to-back marathons, completing an ultra marathon over New Year. And during that, I got quite a serious calf tear, and my wife told me to back off and not do it. And I said to her, well, if this was the 7 in 7, what would I have done? If I had a calf tear, would I pull out? And the answer was categorically no. It's something I'd committed to early on, even though people had said that there could possibly be long-term issues, if I ran on a tear or whatever. But I'd committed to this. If this was my last big event or big project, then so be it. So I ran this ultra marathon, which is called the Hardmoors 50. I ran the entire thing with a torn calf muscle. I'd got some advice from a physio about how to strap up my leg to ensure the least damage, and I hobbled round 32 miles of running through the Yorkshire moors, and weirdly that gave me a lot of pride. I did rest from the run a little bit to allow that to heal and continue swimming and cycling, but it really took me sort of right up in terms of my own self-belief and motivation, because I knew then that I would find a strategy through anything that would happen. And I'll tell you about some things that did happen in the middle of the 7 in 7 that tested that, quite serious things that happened, where that mindset of, it doesn't matter, if I do this on bloody stumps, if I do this on my knees, I will finish it entirely within time. And that just went on and on and on, that sort of that belief and training and the positivity and the ticks as I kept going along. I didn't have any sort of negative experiences until my next benchmark, which was at the Easter time. I'd set myself another challenge, and that was to do 4 days of 70.3. So that's works out at about a 1.9 kilometre swim, about a 56 mile bike, and then a half marathon. And I managed to get through 2 of those before family responsibilities stopped me from doing that. And I was very, very frustrated at that. I struggled with having that dent in the development of this project. And I took a couple of days off because my mindset was, that this, if I didn't complete this and if I didn't get a big tick at the end of it, that I would struggle after this. And I had to sort of take a step back and go, hang on a second, look at everything you've achieved, look at where you're going. Does this really make a bit of difference? And that was kind of less from me and more from my wife, and who is a big part in this, and someone I'll talk about later. The mindset wasn't just my own. It was the calmness of my wife and the backing of the people around me. And when it came to things like that moment of frustration, that other people were able to, if you like, sort of let me see the wood for the trees. I'd been bogged down in it so long that they allowed me to sort of step out of that and go, right, okay, I'll listen to you. You guys are thinking straight. Just chill out and just keep plodding along the way you're going. So along the way, psychologically, generally, really, really good. Lots of positivity. I knew I was doing it for a great reason. Got involved with the charity that I was back in. Went up to see the amazing things they were doing at the hospital, and again, just lifting me. And 2 very different schools of thought of the people in the public. Some absolutely just going, "Wow, what an amazing thing you're doing! We're going to be there every step, and we can't wait till you finish." And then others just going, "Yeah, right. I don't think so. You're not going to do this. There's no way he's going to manage this." And that wasn't in equal measure. I'm going to say it was 90% of people backing me. But even those people, the doubters, the hatesayers, the naysayers, that was just fuel for me. And not only did I want to complete it, but I wanted to complete it convincingly and in the eyes of some of these people to show my true mettle, that, you know, that you weren't going to bring me down. I think that when people say things like that, negativity, it is very simply designed to dent you. These people do that. They're not doing it for their own gratification. They're not doing it to make themselves feel big. They're hoping it gets back to you, and they're hoping it dents you. That's the sort of people they are. And you've got two choices. You can either use that as fuel, or you can wallow in it and believe what they say. And I don't remember a single time thinking, you know, that you're right, I'm not going to do this. I used that as fuel as well. And then through my training as well, sort of some of the sort of like tireder moments, when you've been training for 6 hours in one day, and I did have to work a little bit harder then to say, well, I'm absolutely shattered for the next session. But then again, mindset, looking back and going, well, look what you've just managed to do. You've just done a 6 hour bike ride. Mainly I did this on a turbo, by the way. So I would sit in a garage on my own on a static bike, because I had children, whether they were asleep or they were, you know, just getting up or just going to bed, or it was the middle of the day. I had children, so that as well. If you want to consider that as a bit of a torturous approach, I deliberately tried to find some of the hardest and most uncomfortable and most unforgiving ways of training deliberately. And again, if I can handle 5 to 6 hours on a static bike in the dark, then it's going to be a piece of cake. Undertaking an Ironman out in the sunshine and great weather, which it wasn't, to be honest. I'll tell you all about that later. But yeah, if I was able to handle that, I'm sure as hell I can go on to the next session of the day, which is much easier, a nice hour's swim or a jog out, you know, some sort of recovery run for an hour later on. So yeah, I was constantly checking my mindset. It wasn't something I took for advantage or just allowed to happen. It was something I constantly checked to make sure that I didn't take a dive, because I know it can happen. That physical fatigue can be followed by mental fatigue, which can follow overtraining because you'll try too hard, or it can follow a complete dip in your training. So yeah, and there's a couple of other things as well that I sort of used along the way, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is visualization and mental preparation. So speak again in a minute.